Hello there. Keir Starmer has managed to break the Guinness Book of Records for the world's most boring and irrelevant speech at today's Labour Party conference. As per usual, please like, subscribe and comment below. And when subscribing, please do press that little bell, but also select the all option, or you won't get any notifications when I publish a new video. So the great moment came, and Keir Starmer stood up to address his party face to face for the first time as its leader. The audience cheered, and the rest of us promptly fell asleep. At 7,330 words long, this speech is almost double the length of last year's speech, and definitely doubly boring. Although there were a couple of one-liners in there. For example, he did manage to get the words tool and Boris Johnson into the same breath. My dad was a toolmaker, he said, then added in cheekily, and in a way, so was Boris Johnson's. And then there was his petrol shortage joke. If you go outside and walk along the seafront, it won't be long before you come to a petrol station which has no fuel. Level up? You can't even fill up, he quipped. And he also said that Boris has had no plan since becoming Prime Minister other than to keep repeating the words, "Get Brexit done." Now, many people are framing this as a conference and a leader's speech that will make the Labour Party once more electable. As if everyone's forgotten about Angela Rayner's scum remarks. Pundits are saying that Labour's plans to scrap business rates and tax the online giants more will please the small business community, and that Labour is showing it is on the way to being an option for stable government. But from what I've seen and heard, they made lots of promises, but I'm not sure they laid out where the money was really coming from, and no one seems to be asking. Keir Starmer did say no promises would be made that they couldn't pay for, but replacing billions lost from scrapping business rates? And his approach to tax, he said, would be governed by three principles. The greater part of the burden should not fall on working people. The balance between smaller and larger businesses should be fair. And we will chase down every penny to ensure that people, working people, paying their taxes always get value for money. I get the second and third of those, but the first, the greater part of the burden should not fall on working people. Now, most government revenue comes from the three big taxes: income tax, national insurance contributions and VAT. And two of those are directly connected to people who work. And workers pay VAT as well. So if workers aren't going to shoulder the greater part of the tax burden, then who is? And that for me wasn't really explained. And this is where Starmer may have fallen flat with many conference attendees. Where was the usual Labour class war? Where was the impassioned bit about making the rich pay until the pips squeak? And those three tax principles said nothing about wealth redistribution, just about workers not shouldering the greater part of the tax burden. Well, someone or some entity somewhere has to shoulder the greater part of the burden, otherwise there's no NHS. It's almost as if he was tiptoeing around that bit so as not to frighten those with wealth and assets. Remember that the Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves had her moment in the conference spotlight earlier in the week, where she said, "First, we will make the tax system fairer, ensuring that the burden isn't just falling on the wages of working people, but that those at the top pay their fair share too." And she went on to say, "I pledge that as Chancellor I will not be balancing the books on the backs of the working people." So I take it Labour policy will aim to take a lot of dosh from people who are at the top but don't work, Who are these people that are obscenely wealthy but don't work? I bet there aren't that many of them out there. Just look around the world at the likes of Branson, Musk and Bezos. They put the hours in to get where they are. And I would bet they still do work at it hard every day. No, everything here screams wealth tax at me very loudly, as well as much higher taxes for the huge corporates. And those wealth taxes would have to be swinging to raise the sorts of sums Labour would be looking for. You know, the sorts of sums that drive capital flight and leads to the channeling of millions into the Tory party coffers from the worried wealthy. And Labour would probably only get one bite of the cherry at a wealth tax before they were forced to retransfer the load back onto the workers. Now, Reeves did say in her speech that Labour would be raising more than the entire budget of the NHS by scrapping loads of tax loopholes. But once those are gone, new ones will no doubt be found, or the money will rush offshore. The Shadow Chancellor pointed to one particular loophole, saying, "Under the Conservative Party, private equity bosses who strip the assets of British businesses pay a lower rate of tax on their bonuses than workers do on their wages. That is indefensible, so we will abolish it." But the problem for Rachel Reeves and Labour is not only that the tax break has been in place since 1987, meaning Labour had ample opportunity to sort that out under Blair and Brown, but also that this Tory government is already actively looking at doing exactly that. The FT reported back in November last year that Rishi Sunak has launched a review which could end up with private equity being taxed at rates near to or the same as income tax. But a massive tax raiser it is not. In 2017, taxing it at income tax rates would only have gained an extra £440 million, a mere drop in the tax ocean. And if that's one of Labour's flagship tax policies, then big question marks remain. Now, there was one part of his speech where Starmer appeared to congratulate the Tories on a job well done. But before I get onto that, I just want to say a massive thank you to all my Super Thanks Patreon and PayPal supporters, as well as those that do buy a mug with my mug on it. Links in the descriptions box below. You really do help me keep this channel going. So how did Keir Starmer congratulate the Tories in his speech? Well, he waxed lyrical about his dad's days at work in a factory and how back then they shaped metal by using lathes, drills and milling machines, and he went on to say, "I remember my dad working with a spark eroder, submerging metal in liquid and using an electrical charge to shape it. We thought it was revolutionary at the time." All well and good so far, but then he went on to say, "But at Airbus recently, where they are developing the world's first hydrogen wing, I saw them working with 3D engineering, literally shaping components by bringing together particles and matter in a way unimaginable in the factory my dad used to work in. I saw young apprentices in a fully unionised factory, proud of the skilled work they were doing. Their pride came from knowing they were at the heart of a revolution, building the next generation of hydrogen and battery planes. They felt like the pioneers of flight, perched on the edge of the cliff, taking the risk, knowing that success for one of them would change the world." But the Tories have been in power for a decade. Isn't all that down to them? So what's Starmer saying? That if you want more progress like that, keep Labour in opposition and Boris in number 10. Anyway, one thing Starmer did a fair job of is dealing with the hecklers. Yes, there were hecklers. And one supposes they came from the harder left elements of the party who want to see Corbyn back in charge and a £15 an hour minimum wage. And the Labour leader said he was used to getting heckled every week at this time, but it's usually the Tories doing it during Wednesday lunchtime Prime Minister's questions. And these hecklers kept shouting. So Starmer asked the conference what they wanted, slogans or actions, and they all stood up and clapped until the hecklers quietened down. And to another heckler he said, "I don't much like point scoring." And here was me thinking that point scoring was the object of today's short-term politics, especially at Prime Minister's questions. But at the end of the day, as with any party conference, only the ardent Labour Party followers will believe everything said, and the vast majority of people in the UK won't even know it's taking place. Especially as the Starmer speech was overall such a snooze fest. So what's your opinion of Starmer's speech, or couldn't you be bothered to watch it? Please like and comment below.